In the early 1900s, two teams were racing to put the first man into the sky. One was led by Samuel Pierpont Langley, a Harvard mathematician, senior officer at the Smithsonian, with a $50,000 government grant, the press following his every move, and a team of the brightest engineers money could buy. The other team worked out of a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. Two brothers, no grant, no degrees, not even a high school diploma between them. On December 17, 1903, only one of them flew. And the reason has nothing to do with money or talent. Over the next hour, I'll walk you through every key idea from a book that has quietly changed how the most influential people on the planet think about leadership, business, and the way they show up in their own lives. It's called Start With Why, written by a man named Simon Sinek, a former marketing executive who, after watching his own career fall apart, asked himself a question so simple it almost sounds dumb. Why do some people and companies inspire such fierce loyalty, while others with more money, more talent, more experience never seem to catch on? Think about your own life for a second. There's probably a brand you'd defend in an argument with a stranger, a leader whose words made you feel something, even though if you read them on paper they'd seem ordinary, a friend you'd drop everything to help when you can't even fully explain why. We all have those examples, and on the other side, we've all walked past products that were technically better, leaders who were technically smarter, opportunities that were technically the right fit, and felt nothing, not pulled in, not moved. What's actually happening in those moments? Why does one company make you feel like you belong to something bigger, while another makes you feel like you're just another transaction? Why do some leaders inspire entire movements while others, with all the right credentials, can't even get their own team to follow them out of a meeting room? Sinek's answer, after years of studying the most influential leaders and organizations in history, from Apple to Martin Luther King Jr., from the Wright brothers to Disney, is that every single one of them does one thing the rest of us miss. They start with why. They don't start with what they sell or what they offer or what makes them better. They start with the reason they exist in the first place. And that single shift, almost invisible on the surface, is the reason some people change the world and the rest of us spend our whole careers wondering why nothing ever quite landed the way we hoped it would. So let's actually break it down. Let's start where the book starts. Back in 1903, on a windswept beach in North Carolina, with one of the most surprising upsets in human history. Chapter 1. The Wright brothers' problem. Picture this. The year is 1903. The world is on fire with the idea of human flight, the way our generation has been on fire with smartphones and the internet. Newspapers run breathless stories about the race to build the first machine that could carry a man into the sky. Inventors, engineers, dreamers. Everyone is trying to crack it. And the man everyone is watching, the man the entire country expects to do it first, is named Samuel Pierpont Langley. Langley has every single ingredient for success. He's a respected scientist, a senior officer at the Smithsonian Institution, a former Harvard professor. He's been working on the problem for years, and the United States War Department has handed him a $50,000 grant to finish the job, an enormous sum at the time, the modern equivalent of millions. His friends include Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in America, Alexander Graham Bell, the man who invented the telephone. He has access to the brightest minds, the finest materials, the press constantly at his door. Reporters follow him everywhere. The country is rooting for him. So what about the other team? A few hundred miles away, in the back of a bicycle repair shop in Dayton, Ohio, two brothers named Wilbur and Orville Wright are working on the same problem. They have no grant, no connections in Washington, no press, no fame. Not a single person on their team has an advanced degree, not even a college education. Most of them don't even have a high school diploma. They fund the work out of the small change they earn fixing bicycles for their neighbors. By every measure the world cared about in 1903, this was not a fair fight. Langley should have won, easily. And then, on December 17th, on a stretch of beach called Kitty Hawk, the brothers from the bicycle shop took off into the air. The first powered, controlled, manned flight in human history. A small group of witnesses, a handful of photographs, a moment that would change civilization forever. Now here's the part of the story almost nobody talks about. The day Langley heard the news, the day he learned that two unknown brothers had beaten him to the sky, he didn't fly back to his workshop and try again. He didn't iterate, he didn't congratulate them and join the cause. He quit. He walked away from the project and never tried again. Think about that. A man who had spent years of his life, mountains of money, and the full force of his reputation chasing this dream, gave up the moment somebody else got there first. Why? Because Langley wasn't actually chasing flight. He was chasing the thing that flight would give him: wealth, fame, glory. Once those were taken off the table, the work itself meant nothing to him. There was no deeper reason to keep going. So he stopped. But the Wright brothers, they weren't doing it for the money. They weren't doing it for the fame. They weren't doing it because they wanted their faces on the cover of magazines. They had something else, something quieter, something invisible from the outside. They believed, deep in their bones, that if they could solve the problem of flight, they would change the course of the world. That every human being would one day move through the air the way we move through cities now. That ordinary people in ordinary towns would do extraordinary things. That belief, that quiet, unshakable conviction, was what kept them in the shop on cold mornings when nothing was working. It was what made their team show up day after day, without a paycheck, without recognition, for the sheer chance to be part of building something they thought could change everything. Langley had the money, the Wrights had the why, and only one of those is enough to actually make you fly. So ask yourself this: how many Langleys do you know? How many people in your life have every ingredient for success? The resume, the funding, the connections, but somehow never seem to break through? How many companies do you work with or buy from that have all the right features, all the right marketing, all the right strategies, but feel hollow somehow? And on the other side, how many Wright brothers do you know? People without obvious advantages, working out of small offices or kitchen tables, who somehow attract loyalty and energy and momentum out of thin air just because of what they believe? This is the pattern Sinek built his entire career on. Once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. The leaders who change history don't have more resources than everyone else. They have something more important. They know exactly why they're doing what they're doing, and the people around them know it too. That's the difference. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of us, most companies, most leaders, most of you listening right now, we don't actually know our why. We know what we do. We can describe our job. We can list our skills. We can rattle off our products or our services. We can talk about how we do things better, faster, cheaper than the next person. But if you stopped us in the middle of all that and asked, very simply, why do you do it? Most of us would freeze. And that gap, that one missing word, why, is the difference between a Langley and a Wright, the difference between a job and a calling, the difference between someone people follow because they have to and someone people follow because they want to. Now, you might be thinking, okay, fine, but the Wright brothers got lucky. That's a nice story, but it's just one example. So let's look at how most of the world actually works. Let's look at what most leaders, most companies, most of us reach for instead of starting with why. Because once you see that pattern, once you see the trap almost everybody falls into, you'll start to understand exactly why so many smart, hardworking, well-funded people end up right where Langley did, with every ingredient for success and nothing to show for it. Because what most of us reach for when we want someone to do something isn't inspiration at all. It's manipulation. Chapter 2. The manipulation trap. Now that word, manipulation, sounds harsh. So let me explain what Sinek actually means by it. Because most of the time, we're not doing it on purpose. We're doing it because everybody else is doing it. We're doing it because on the surface, it works. Imagine you walk into a store to buy a phone. You haven't done much research. You're just looking. A salesperson comes up to you and says, "This one's on sale today, 20% off, but only until the end of the week." Suddenly, you feel a little pressure, not the painful kind, the exciting kind. You think, maybe I should grab it before the deal ends. That's manipulation. That's the carrot. Lower the price. Create urgency. Make the listener feel like they're getting a deal too good to refuse. Now imagine the salesperson goes a different direction. Instead of the discount, they tell you that this model is the one all the experts are recommending, the one all your friends are probably already using, the one everybody at your workplace seems to have. That's manipulation too. That's peer pressure dressed up in a tie. The pull isn't the phone itself. It's the fear of being the only one without it. What about fear? Have you ever been sold something using fear? Of course you have. Insurance commercials use it constantly. Imagine if something happens to you tomorrow, to your family, to your home. Are you covered? Are you protected? The pull there isn't the insurance. It's the picture of disaster they just planted in your head, and the promise that buying their product makes it go away. Or aspiration. The fitness ad that shows you the perfect body and whispers, "This could be you in 8 weeks." The luxury car commercial that shows a quiet person driving down a coastal highway and tells you, very gently, "This is what success looks like." The implication is always the same. You're not enough yet. But buy this and you will be. These tactics work. That's not the issue. The issue is what they cost you on the way. Think about your own buying decisions for a second. Have you ever bought a gym membership in January? Most people have. And how did it feel walking through those doors on January 2nd? Amazing. You felt unstoppable. New year, new you. By February, the car drives itself past the gym without you noticing. By March, you've stopped going entirely and you're paying for a membership you'll never use. So what happened? Nothing changed in you between January 2nd and March. The body that bought the membership is the same body that stopped going. What changed is that the manipulation wore off. The aspirational pull, the picture of the better you, the new year, the fresh start, that worked just long enough to get your credit card out, but it wasn't strong enough to carry you through 8 weeks of actually showing up at 6 in the morning when it was cold and dark and your bed was warm. And that's the rule. Manipulations work in the moment. They create the action, but they never create loyalty. They never carry the listener through the hard middle. They wear off, and the next time you want them to do something, you have to manipulate them again. A bigger discount, a scarier ad, a more aspirational image. The price keeps going up. The relationship stays exactly as shallow as it was the first time. Sinek tells a story about an airline called Continental back in the early 1990s. At that point, Continental was the worst major airline in the country. The planes were dirty. They were chronically late. The customers hated them. And here's the part most leaders never see. The employees hated them more. The culture was so toxic that flight attendants would scrape the Continental logo off their uniforms before walking through the airport because they didn't want to be associated with the company they worked for. You know what some of the executives were doing? They were holding up planes, actually delaying departures, so they wouldn't miss their own connections. Forget the passengers, forget the crew. The company didn't have a culture. It had a hierarchy where everyone fought for themselves and nobody believed in anything. So how do you turn a company like that around? Most leaders would reach into the same old toolbox, discount the tickets, run a promotion, threaten the bottom performers, reward the top performers, layer on the bonuses, manipulate the customers in, manipulate the employees out of their bad behavior. That's the standard playbook. A man named Gordon Bethune walked in and did something completely different. We'll come back to exactly what he did later in the video because it's one of the most powerful stories in this whole book. But for now, all you need to know is that he didn't reach for the carrots and the sticks. He gave them something to believe in. And inside a year, Continental went from the worst airline in America to one of the best. With the same employees, the same planes, the same routes, the same fuel prices. So what really changed? Here's the part of the book that should bother you a little. Sinek points out that almost everything we've been taught about influence, about marketing, about leadership, about getting other people to act is some version of manipulation. Drop the price, create scarcity, promise the upgrade, threaten the consequence, show the celebrity using it, play on the fear of missing out. All of it works. None of it lasts. And the harder part to admit is that we don't just do it to other people. We do it to ourselves. We try to manipulate ourselves into the gym. We try to manipulate ourselves into being more productive with deadlines and threats and rewards. We promise ourselves a coffee if we finish the report. We tell ourselves we'll feel terrible if we don't go for the run. And when those carrots and sticks stop working, which they always do, we conclude something is wrong with us. We're lazy. We're undisciplined. We just need to try harder. But maybe the problem isn't your discipline. Maybe the problem is that you've been trying to manipulate yourself into something instead of starting with the reason you wanted it in the first place. Because here's what Sinek discovered, and here's the entire foundation of the next 40 minutes. Inspiration and manipulation look almost identical on the outside. They both produce action. They both move people. The difference is what happens after. The action a manipulation produces is rented. The action an inspiration produces is owned. So if manipulation is the easy way, the way most leaders, most companies, most of us go, what does it actually look like to start with why? What's the alternative? What's the pattern that the Wright brothers and Apple and Martin Luther King Jr. and the leaders who actually move history all share? That's where Sinek introduces the framework, the single most quoted, most copied, most talked about model in modern leadership thinking. He calls it the golden circle. And once you see it, you'll start noticing the difference between Langley and the Wrights in every single interaction you have for the rest of your life. Chapter 3. The golden circle. Imagine 3 concentric circles, like a target. A small dot in the center, a ring around it, a bigger ring around that. This is the simplest possible diagram you'll ever see. And it might also be the most important one Sinek ever drew on a whiteboard. The outer ring is what? Every company on the planet knows what they do. They sell software, they make cars, they run hospitals, they cut hair. If you ask a stranger what they do for a living, this is the answer you get. I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. What is the easy part? What is the surface? What is the thing on your business card? The middle ring is how. Some companies, some people, can also tell you how they do what they do. This is where the differentiators live. We use proprietary technology. We have a unique process. We hire only the top 1% of candidates. We have 10 years of experience the competition doesn't have. How is the value proposition? How is the elevator pitch most professionals get taught in their first job? How is the thing you put on slide 2? And then there's why. The small dot in the center. The thing almost nobody can articulate. Why is not what you do. Why is not how you do it. Why is the reason you do it at all. Why does your company exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? What do you actually believe? Not your profit motive. That's a result, not a reason. What is the deeper purpose, the cause, the conviction that makes the work matter to you in the first place? Most companies, most people, can answer the outer ring perfectly. They can mostly answer the middle ring. And when you push them to the center, to the WII, they go silent. Or worse, they give you a corporate slogan. We exist to deliver value to our customers. We exist to be the leader in our space. We exist to disrupt the industry. None of that is a why. All of that is filler. So how does this play out in the real world? How does the golden circle actually look in the wild? Let me give you Sinek's most famous demonstration, because it's the kind of thing you hear once and never quite think the same way again. Imagine Apple was like every other computer company. Imagine they communicated from the outside ring inward, from what to how to why. The ad would sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? That's it. That's the pitch. It's not bad. It's not wrong. The information is true. And honestly, it sounds exactly like how every other tech company in the world talks about itself. Want to buy one? Now let's flip it. Let's go from the inside out. Let's start with WI. In everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Listen to that again. Same information, same product, almost the same words, but the order is reversed, and the feeling is completely different. What happened in your chest when you heard the second version? Be honest. Did you lean in a little? Did you suddenly want to know more? Did you maybe for half a second feel like buying a computer? That wasn't an accident. That's the difference between selling a product and selling a belief. The first version sells you a machine. The second version sells you who you are. Because here's the line Sinek built his entire career on. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Let me say that again, because this is the sentence the whole book lives or dies on. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Think about Apple users for a second. Most of them will tell you they buy Apple products because the design is better, the user interface is cleaner, the software is more intuitive. And maybe that's true, but ask yourself, why are they willing to pay double, sometimes triple, what an equivalent computer costs? Why will a die-hard Apple fan refuse a free PC and keep using an aging MacBook because it's the right one? Why do people tattoo the Apple logo on their bodies? It's not the computer. The computer is just the proof. What they're really buying is the feeling that there's someone who challenges the status quo, someone who thinks differently, someone who doesn't just follow the herd. The product is the badge. The product is what lets them tell the outside world, this is who I am. And here's the thing, Apple knows that. They've never run an ad that lists the technical specs of a MacBook against a Dell. They don't have to. They communicate from the inside out, and the people who already believe what they believe find them. The rest happens on its own. Now compare that to almost every other tech company in the world. Look at a Dell ad or an HP ad or pretty much any laptop manufacturer. What do they show you? Specs, speeds, storage, discounts, trade-in offers. They're shouting at you from the outer ring of the circle. What? And that's why nobody tattoos a Dell logo on their body. Because Dell hasn't given them a why to believe in. They've only given them a what to buy. And this pattern is everywhere. Sinek points to one of the most famous speeches in human history to make the point. August 1963, the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. 250,000 people are standing on the National Mall in the August heat. They didn't get an invitation in the mail. There were no email blasts. There wasn't even much in the way of organized transportation. They came because they heard, by word of mouth, that something was happening, and they wanted to be there. What did Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. say when he stepped up to that microphone? He didn't say, I have a plan. He didn't say, I have a strategy. He didn't open with a 12-step legislative roadmap to civil rights reform. He said, I have a dream. He told people what he believed. And the people who believed the same thing, the 250,000 strangers who'd walked, driven, taken buses, hitchhiked across the country, they showed up not for him, they showed up for themselves. Because somewhere in his words, they heard their own conviction reflected back. That's what a WI does. That's what starting with belief instead of strategy makes possible. Now compare that with most leaders today, most CEOs, most managers, most politicians, most of us in our day-to-day work. We lead with the plan, we lead with the strategy, we lead with what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and we wonder why nobody seems to follow with the same energy we feel. It's because you're showing them the outer ring. You haven't shown them the center. Now, just so we're clear, the golden circle is not 3 steps. It's not a checklist. You don't sit down on Monday morning and say, today I'll work on my why, tomorrow I'll work on my how, Wednesday I'll figure out my what. It's a way of thinking, a way of communicating, a way of seeing the world. And it operates by 3 rules. Rule 1, clarity of WI. You have to know it, not vaguely, not in a corporate mission statement on the wall way. You have to be able to say in plain language what you believe, what you're really doing this for. Because if you can't articulate your why, how is anyone else supposed to know it? And if your customers, your team, your audience can't see the why behind what you do, then you're competing on price and features, and there's always somebody cheaper somewhere with better features. Rule 2, discipline of how. Once you know your why, you have to actually live it. The how is the values and principles that guide your behavior. And here's where most companies fall apart. Sinek points out that most organizations write their values on the wall as nouns: integrity, innovation, honesty, excellence. And nouns are useless. You can't hold somebody accountable to a noun. What does it mean to do more integrity today? Try a little extra innovation by Friday? It's hollow. Values only work when they're verbs, not integrity. Always do the right thing, even when no one's watching. Not innovation. Look at every problem from a different angle. Not honesty. Say the difficult truth, even when it costs you. Now you have something a person can actually act on. Now you have something you can hold a team accountable to. Now your how is real. Rule 3. Consistency of what? Every single thing you do, your products, your marketing, your hiring, your office culture, your customer service, the way you answer the phone, has to be consistent with your why. Because what you do is the only proof your why is real. Sinek puts it like this: a why is just a belief. A how is the actions you take to bring that belief to life. And a what is everything that comes out the other end. Your products, your services, the things people can see and touch. If your products contradict your why, nobody will believe in it anymore. The whole thing falls apart. Want a quick example of this falling apart? In 2004, Volkswagen, the people's car, the company built on serving regular working families, the company that put a little vase for fresh flowers on the dashboard of the Beetle, introduced a luxury sedan called the Phaeton. $70,000, massage seats, 4-zone climate control, a monster on the road, better engineered than its competition. Nobody bought it. Almost literally nobody. Critics loved it. The features were superior. The price wasn't even outrageous for the category. So what happened? The car violated everything we already knew about Volkswagen. We didn't have to think about it. We just sensed it. A people's car company doesn't make $70,000 luxury sedans. The what didn't match the why. So even with a great product, the loyal Volkswagen buyer walked away, and the Mercedes buyer wasn't going to switch to a brand they associated with hippie vans. The Phaeton sat on lots for years, and this is the test, by the way. This is the silent test every customer, every employee, every person who interacts with you is constantly running. Does what you do match what I think you believe? When the answer is yes, you build trust. When the answer is no, you destroy it. And you don't even know it's happening. But once your golden circle is in balance, once your why is clear, your how is disciplined, and your what is consistent, something extraordinary happens. People stop just buying your products. They start telling other people about you. They start defending you to their friends. They start integrating you into their identity. Not because you manipulated them, because they actually believe what you believe. And that is the kind of loyalty no discount in the world can buy. Now, here's the part that surprised even Sinek when he was researching this. He didn't think he was uncovering a marketing principle. He thought he was uncovering something that operates at the level of biology, because the golden circle isn't just a clever way to think about communication. It maps directly onto how the human brain is actually built. And once you see that mapping, you'll understand why the second version of the Apple ad made you feel something the first one didn't. Chapter 4. The biology of belief. So why does the golden circle work? Why does ordering your message from the inside out, from why to how to what, actually pull people in, while ordering it the other way just makes them tune out? Sinek's answer is that the golden circle isn't a marketing trick. It's a reflection of how the human brain is actually organized. Now, I want to be honest with you. The neuroscience here is a little simplified. Modern brain science would push back on some of the specifics, but the bigger point Sinek is making holds up, and once you hear it, you'll recognize it from your own life. The argument goes like this. Picture the human brain split into two rough zones. The newer part, called the neocortex, that's the part that does language. It does numbers, logic, analysis. When you read a spreadsheet, when you compare features on a product page, when you weigh a pros and cons list, you're using the neocortex. This is the part that loves data. And then there's the older part, the deeper part. The part scientists sometimes call the limbic brain. This is where feelings live. Trust, loyalty, love, the gut sense that something is right or wrong. even when you can't explain it. And here's the catch. This older, deeper part of the brain doesn't really do words. It feels, it decides, but it doesn't speak. Now think about what this means. When somebody talks to you about what they do, features, specs, comparisons, price, they're addressing the part of your brain that handles language and analysis. They're talking to your neocortex. And your neocortex says, okay, this is well priced and has good features. I have all the information I need. Got it. Thank you. And it moves on. But when somebody talks to you about why they do what they do, when they share a belief, a conviction, a deeper purpose, they're going past the neocortex entirely. They're talking directly to the part of your brain that handles decisions and feelings. They're talking to the part of you that doesn't argue with itself, the part of you that just knows. And that, Sinek argues, is why the dull UI hits so much harder than the what. It's not a marketing trick, it's a wiring trick. You're aiming your message at the deeper system instead of the surface system. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Because this older part of the brain controls behavior but doesn't really speak, this is the reason you and I can have feelings we cannot explain. Have you ever made a decision that on paper made absolutely no sense? Stayed in a job everybody told you to leave? Left a relationship everybody said was great? Bought something that didn't match the spreadsheet? You knew. You couldn't say why, but you knew. Or try this. Try right now to explain in one clean sentence why you love your spouse, or your best friend, or your favorite teacher from high school. You'll start listing things. They're kind, they're funny, they're smart, they get me. But every one of those things is true of 1,000 other people you don't love at all. You can't actually capture it, because the part of you that loves them isn't the part of you that talks. The feeling came first. The reasons came second. This is why surveys fail. This is why customer research can only take you so far. When you ask someone why they bought what they bought, they'll give you reasons. Good reasons. Reasonable sounding reasons. But those reasons are an after-the-fact story their neocortex made up to explain a decision their limbic brain had already made. Sinek tells a story to make this real. Picture a single guy. He's got a Honda Odyssey minivan. It's a great minivan. It's reliable. It's spacious. It gets good mileage. It does its job perfectly. But every time he pulls up to a date in his Honda Odyssey, something doesn't feel right. He knows intellectually it's a fine car, but it doesn't say who he wants to be in the world. So he trades it in for a Ferrari. Beautiful car. Red. Loud. Exactly the statement he wanted to make. He rolls up to the next date and it feels right. The car is saying out loud what he wants to say about himself. Now picture the opposite. A father of 3 young kids. He has a Ferrari. It's gorgeous. But every time he tries to load the kids into it, every time he tries to fit a stroller in the trunk, every time he struggles with car seats, the car is saying the wrong thing about who he is. So he trades it for a Honda Odyssey. The car finally fits the life. The car finally fits the belief. Same 2 cars. Same 2 people, 2 completely different stories. And neither one was choosing based on horsepower or cup holders or technical specs. They were choosing based on what the car said about who they believed they were. This is what Sinek means when he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. They're not buying the object, they're buying who the object lets them be. And it's why all the data in the world won't convince a customer who doesn't feel it. You can prove mathematically that one product is better than another, and the customer will still choose the worst product if it lines up with who they feel they are. We've all done it. We've all paid more for the worse option because, on some level, it just felt right. So what does this mean for you, listening to this right now? It means that if you're trying to lead a team, build a company, sell anything, persuade anyone, or even just live a life that actually feels like yours, leading with the W8 will only ever get you transactions. It'll never get you loyalty. Loyalty lives one level down. Loyalty lives in the part of the brain that doesn't argue, and it means that when you're trying to figure out your own choices, your own career, your own relationships, your own purchases, and the spreadsheet says one thing but your gut says another, your gut isn't broken. Your gut is the older, deeper part of you, telling you something it can't quite put into words. The skill is not to override it. The skill is to listen. When you communicate from the inside out, when you start with why, you are speaking directly to the part of the brain that decides. And when that part of the brain says yes, the rest of you finds the reasons, the features, the specs, the prices. They become the proof, not the pitch. So now we know what the golden circle is, and we know why it works at the level of human wiring. But knowing this and doing this are two completely different things, because once you understand starting with why, the obvious question becomes, how do you actually attract the right people to your cause? How do you build the kind of trust that makes a stranger willing to follow you across the ocean? How do you go from one believer to a movement? And to answer that, Sinek takes us to one of the strangest job ads ever written. Chapter 5, Trust, Loyalty, and the Cathedral. Early in the 20th century, an Englishman named Ernest Shackleton was preparing for one of the most insane expeditions in human history. He wanted to be the first man to cross the entire Antarctic continent on foot, 1,800 miles, frozen wasteland, temperatures that could kill a man in minutes. No technology to call for help, no rescue if anything went wrong. He needed a crew, 27 men who would walk willingly into the most hostile environment on Earth and survive months, maybe years, of unimaginable suffering. So Shackleton placed an ad in the London Times. Now picture what most of us would write: help wanted. Experienced sailors, 5 years minimum experience, strong work ethic, must work well in a team. Come join a fantastic expedition and a fantastic captain. We're going to make history together. You'd get loads of applicants. Some of them would be qualified. Some of them would be hardworking. And exactly 0 of them would have any real clue what they were signing up for, because that ad doesn't tell them anything except what the job is. Here's what Shackleton actually wrote. Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Read that again in your head if you didn't catch it the first time. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, and the only reward he's promising at the end is honor and recognition. If, and that's a big if, you survive. Who in their right mind responds to that ad? The exact kind of person Shackleton needed. That's who. Because that ad is not a job description. That ad is a filter. It's designed to repel everyone who's just looking for a paycheck and to attract the rare person who reads those words and thinks, yes, sign me up. That's exactly the kind of life I want. And what happened? Shackleton sailed for Antarctica with 27 of those rare men. A few months into the expedition, their ship, the Endurance, got trapped in pack ice. The ice slowly crushed it. They watched it sink in the frigid Weddell Sea and were left stranded on a floe, hundreds of miles from any human being on Earth. They survived on the ice for over a year. Then Shackleton and 5 men sailed 800 miles in a tiny lifeboat across the most violent waters on the planet to reach a whaling station and bring back help. They saved every single one of the men they'd left behind. Not one person died. Not one mutiny. Not one act of betrayal in conditions that would have broken any normal group of human beings. Because Shackleton didn't hire sailors, he hired believers. And believers, when the ship goes down, build a new ship. So here's what this means for the rest of us. The way we hire is broken. We write job descriptions full of skills and experience requirements. We screen for resumes and credentials. We ask in interviews, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then we wonder why every team we build turns out kind of average. You know what almost no employer asks? What do you believe? Why do you want to do this work? What are you really here for? Because once those questions get answered honestly, most of the resume stops mattering. Sinek tells the story of Southwest Airlines back in the 1970s. Back then, all the flight attendants at Southwest wore hot pants and go-go boots. It was the 70s, weird clothing was just the cost of being alive. Southwest's executives quietly noticed something. The only people willing to apply for those jobs in those uniforms were former cheerleaders and majorettes from high school. Most companies would have changed the uniform. Southwest looked at the data and made a completely different decision. They kept the uniform, and they started actively recruiting cheerleaders and majorettes. Because what is a cheerleader? A cheerleader is someone whose whole disposition is about lifting other people up, pumping energy into a crowd, believing out loud that the underdog can win. That is exactly the kind of person Southwest needed to fly for an airline whose entire identity is built on giving the everyday traveler a chance to fly affordably and happily. Southwest had stumbled onto Sinek's principle a generation before he wrote the book. They didn't hire for skill. They hired for belief. The skill they could teach. Great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hire already motivated people and inspire them. Now, if you've ever managed a team, this idea probably stings a little, because most of us have, at some point in our lives, hired someone with a perfect resume who just couldn't bring themselves to care, or watched someone we adored, who showed up early and stayed late and tried with everything they had, get let go because the skill gap was too wide. And in both cases, we thought the problem was talent, but the deeper problem, the one underneath the surface, was belief. A motivated person in the wrong company will quietly die inside. A believer in the right company will find a way to do work nobody thought was possible. To illustrate this, Sinek tells one of the oldest stories in the book. Two stonemasons working on a construction site. You walk up to the first one and ask, "Do you like your job?" And he looks up, wipes the sweat from his face, and says, "I've been building this wall as long as I can remember. The work is monotonous. The sun is hot. The stones are heavy. I'm not even sure if this project will be finished in my lifetime. But it's a job. It pays the bills." You thank him. You walk 30 feet over to the second stonemason doing the exact same work. You ask him the exact same question. "Do you like your job?" He looks up at you, smiles, and says, "I love my job. I'm building a cathedral. Sure, I've been working on this wall as long as I can remember. And yes, the work is monotonous. The sun is hot. The stones are heavy. I'm not even sure this project will be finished in my lifetime. But I'm building a cathedral. Same wall. Same stones. Same sweat. Same future. Two completely different lives. The first stonemason will leave the moment somebody offers him a better paying wall to build. The second stonemason will turn down a higher paying, easier job to keep working on his cathedral. Not because the work is better, because the work means something. And this is what the great leaders understand. The role of a leader is not to motivate people, it's to give them a cathedral to build. To articulate clearly and consistently why this work matters. To make sure the people sweating in the sun lifting heavy stones know that what they're really doing is something far bigger than the stones in front of them. Now remember Continental Airlines, the story I promised we'd come back to? The worst airline in America. Dirty planes, late departures, employees scraping the logo off their own uniforms. This is where Gordon Bethune walks in. He could have done what every consultant in the world would have told him to do: cut costs, renegotiate contracts, restructure the routes, squeeze more performance out of the system, manipulate the workforce with bonuses for the top performers and threats for the bottom ones. He didn't do any of that first. The first thing he did was tell people in clear language what the company was going to stand for, that they were going to win, that every single employee, from the pilots to the people who scrubbed the planes at night, was going to win together or not at all. Then he did something simple. He told the entire workforce that every month Continental ranked in the top 5 airlines in the country for on-time performance. Every single employee, all 40,000 of them, would get a check for $65, not added to their paycheck. A separate check, with a message printed on it that said, "Thank you for helping make Continental one of the best." You might be thinking, $65? That's not even real money. Why would anyone care about $65? Because the money wasn't the point. The money was the symbol. The check was the cathedral. 40,000 people, all pointed in the same direction, all winning or losing together, all reminded every single month why they were showing up to work. And inside 1 year, Continental went from the worst airline in America to one of the most profitable. Same planes, same routes, same fuel prices, different cathedral. So now we know how to attract the right people. We know how to give them something to believe in. We know how to build the kind of trust that makes a team unbreakable. But there's one more thing Sinek wants us to understand, because it's the difference between a great little company everybody loves and a movement that actually changes the world. He calls it the law of diffusion. Here's how it works. If you took every human being on the planet and you laid them out on a curve based on how willing they are to try new things, you'd find something fascinating. 2.5% of people are what we'd call innovators. They'd try anything once, just for the thrill of being first. Another 13.5% are early adopters. They're not first, but they're close, and they're willing to take real risks on something new if it speaks to them. Then you've got the early majority, about 34%. The early majority is practical. They wait until something is proven. Then the late majority, another 34%, who only buy in after most people already have. And finally, the laggards, the 16% who buy touch-tone phones only because they don't make rotary phones anymore. Now here's where most companies make a fatal mistake. They look at all this data and say, most of our buyers will come from the majority. So let's aim everything we do at the middle of the curve. Let's market to the practical buyer. Let's lower the price to attract the late adopter. Let's smooth out the rough edges so everyone can love us. And every time this fails, because the early and late majority will not buy anything until somebody on the left side of the curve has already tried it first. Think about how you bought your last phone. Did you walk into the store and just pick the newest model? Or did you, somewhere along the way, ask a friend, read reviews, see what other people you trusted were using? That's the law of diffusion working on you in real time. Sinek tells the story of TiVo, the digital video recorder. Most people under 30 might not even remember TiVo at this point, but in the late 1990s, this was one of the most exciting product launches in tech history. TiVo invented something genuinely new. You could pause live television, skip commercials, record shows automatically. It was magic. The company had unlimited venture capital, the best engineers, perfect public relations. They became so culturally famous that the brand became a verb, to TiVo something. And TiVo, the company, almost completely failed. Why? Because their marketing went straight at the middle of the curve. Their pitch was, we've got a new product. It pauses live TV. It skips commercials. It rewinds. It memorizes your viewing habits and records shows for you. Just like Apple's bad version of their own ad. What? Trying to convince the practical mainstream buyer with features and benefits. And the mainstream buyer looked at TiVo and said, that sounds nice, but I'm not sure I really need it. And they didn't buy. The company that should have been the iPhone of television became a cautionary tale. Now imagine if TiVo had spoken to the people on the left side of the curve first. The innovators and early adopters. The people who don't want to wait for permission. If they had said, for those of you who believe you should be in control of your own time, who refuse to live by the broadcast schedules of the major networks, who believe television should fit your life and not the other way around. Want one? That message would have ignited the left side of the curve. Those people would have bought it, used it, talked about it. And by the time the early majority came around looking for proof, the proof would have been everywhere. The product would have tipped, but TiVo didn't speak to belief. They spoke to features. They got the law of diffusion exactly backwards. This is why starting with WI is not just good marketing. It's the only way to build a movement. Movements start with the small percentage of people who already believe what you believe. They spread because those believers tell others. They tip because by the time the practical majority shows up, the social proof has already been built. Sinek puts it like this. The goal of business is not to sell to anyone who wants what you have. The goal is to find the people who believe what you believe. And once you find enough of them, they will bring the rest of the world along for you. So now you understand it. You understand the trap of manipulation. You understand the golden circle. You understand the biology of belief. You understand how to attract the right people. You understand how movements actually spread. You'd think this would be the end of the story. You'd think, well, if you start with WI and you do everything right, you'll win and you'll keep winning forever. But there's one more thing Sinek wants you to understand, and it might be the most important warning in the entire book. Because there's a strange and painful pattern in the history of every great company that starts with WII, a pattern that almost nobody sees coming. And once you understand it, you'll never look at a successful business, or a successful person, or a successful life the same way again. Chapter 6. When Why Goes Fuzzy. Sam Walton built one of the most beloved companies in the history of American business. He started Walmart in 1962 in a small town in Arkansas, in an industry already crowded with bigger, better-funded competitors. Kmart was already huge. Target was already huge. Walmart was nothing. But Walton had a why, a real one. He didn't believe his company existed to sell things cheaply. He believed his company existed to serve people, to serve his customers, to serve his employees, to serve the small towns where he opened his stores. He said it again and again, we're all working together. That's the secret. And from that belief, Walmart became one of the most extraordinary success stories in American business. Customers loved them. Employees gave their best. Small towns competed to have one. Within decades, it was the largest retailer in the world. So what happened? Sam Walton died in 1992, and the man who carried the why of the company died with him. Walmart kept going. The stores stayed open. The logo didn't change. The strategy didn't change. The supply chain kept getting more efficient, but the why went fuzzy, and almost imperceptibly, the company that had been built on service became a company built on price. Service was the why. Price was just the how. But after Walton was gone, his successors mistook the how for the soul of the business. They started cutting costs at any cost. They started squeezing suppliers. They started squeezing employees. The bonuses for the executive team grew while the wages on the floor stayed flat or shrank. In the years that followed Walton's death, Walmart was hit with a scandal almost every year. Wage violations, labor lawsuits, communities organizing to keep new Walmart stores out of their towns. The company once loved for how it treated its people became, by a slow and quiet drift, infamous for how it treated them. Nothing illegal had necessarily changed at the top. The same products sat on the shelves. The smiley face logo was still on every receipt. From the outside, Walmart still looked like Walmart. So what was different? What was different is that the people running the company had stopped knowing why the company existed. Sinek calls this the split. And it doesn't happen just at Walmart. It happens to almost every great company eventually. It's what happened at Starbucks when Howard Schultz left for the first time. The company kept selling coffee, but the coffee was no longer the point. Starbucks had been built on Schultz's vision of the third space, that comfortable place between work and home, where strangers could sit, work, talk, breathe. It wasn't really a coffee company, it was a place company. And when Schultz left, his successors started doing things that made financial sense, but quietly contradicted that why. They got rid of the ceramic cups and saucers because paper was cheaper. They expanded too fast. They started selling breakfast sandwiches whose smell hung in the stores and competed with the aroma of fresh coffee. Each decision, looked at alone, was reasonable. Looked at together, they were dismantling the soul of the company. By 2008, Starbucks was hemorrhaging. Schultz, watching from the sidelines, wrote a memo to his successor begging him to evoke the heritage, the tradition, and the passion that we all have for the true Starbucks experience. The successor couldn't do it, because the successor had never carried the why in the first place. He'd inherited a business, not a belief. Schultz came back. And slowly, story by story, decision by decision, he rebuilt the why from the inside out. The same thing happened at Dell. Michael Dell started a company built on getting more computing power into more hands. He believed in efficiency, in cutting out the middleman, in trusting the customer. He stepped down as CEO. The company drifted. Customer service collapsed. Falsified earnings reports started showing up to meet quarterly numbers. Within 3 years, he had to come back to try to save the company he'd built. You see the pattern? Sam Walton dies, Walmart goes fuzzy, Howard Schultz leaves, Starbucks goes fuzzy, Michael Dell steps back, Dell goes fuzzy, and it's not because their successors were bad people or bad managers. Most of them were smart, capable, hard-working executives with impressive resumes. The problem wasn't competence. The problem was that the why never got written down properly. It lived inside the founder, and when the founder walked out the door, the why walked out with him. Why does this matter to you, sitting here listening to this? You may not be a founder, you may not run a company, but this pattern doesn't just happen to businesses, it happens to people too. Sinek tells a story about a group of high-performing entrepreneurs that meets every year at MIT. They call themselves the Gathering of Titans. These are some of the most successful business owners in America. Many of them are multimillionaires. Some of them never have to work again if they don't want to. On the first day of one of these gatherings, somebody asked the room, "How many of you have hit your financial goals?" About 80% of the hands went up. Then they asked a follow-up question. With your hands still in the air, how many of you actually feel successful? About 80% of the hands came down. Here's a room full of entrepreneurs who'd hit every external marker of success. The money, the companies, the freedom, the recognition, and 4 out of 5 of them, asked honestly, did not feel like the success they'd built was the success they'd been chasing. Many of them reminisced about the early days, when they were broke, when they were working out of basements, when they didn't know if their business would survive another month. They said those were some of the happiest times of their lives. And now, with everything they ever said they wanted, the feeling was gone. What happened? They went through the split, just like Walmart did, just like Starbucks did, just like Dell did. They had started something out of a deep belief, and along the way, they confused the achievement with the meaning. They thought the milestone was the destination. They thought hitting the financial target was the same thing as the reason they'd started. Sinek draws a beautiful distinction here between achievement and success. Achievement is the thing you can measure, the money, the title, the market share, the award, the yacht. Achievement is the W-et, it's clear, it's defined, it's countable. But success, the feeling of it, the lived experience of it, is something else entirely. Success is when you wake up every day still chasing the WII, still building the cathedral, still feeling that what you're doing matters. You can be massively achieved and completely unsuccessful. You can be modestly achieved and feel like the richest person in the room. The two are not the same thing, and almost everybody at some point confuses them. So what's the warning for the rest of us? If you build anything, a company, a career, a creative practice, a family, a life, you will be tempted as it grows to forget why you started it. The metrics of success will get louder and louder. The bonuses, the titles, the praise, the visible markers of having made it. And the quiet, original reason you started in the first place will get quieter, almost imperceptibly, until one day you find yourself somewhere you used to dream about being and you don't feel anything anymore. This is the split. And the only protection against it is to do for yourself what Walton, Schultz, and Dell failed to do in their companies. Write the why down. Speak it out loud. Hand it to the people around you. Build it into the systems and the language of your daily life so it can survive the moments when your energy can't carry it alone. Because the reason you started will always matter more than the thing you ended up building. Always. The building is the proof. The why is the life. And when you forget that, when the why goes fuzzy, no amount of achievement, no amount of growth, no amount of money is going to feel like the thing you thought it would feel like. So with all of this in mind, the Wright brothers, the manipulation trap, the golden circle, the biology of belief, the cathedral builders, the law of diffusion, the split, let's pull it all together. Because the practical question, after listening to all of this, is the same one Sinek wants every reader to ask themselves at the end of the book. Now that you've seen the pattern, what are you going to do with it? The key takeaways. 1. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. This is the sentence the entire book stands on. Every product, every leader, every relationship, Every business is competing for attention in a world drowning in features and benefits. The only thing that breaks through is belief. When you can show somebody, clearly and consistently, what you actually stand for, not what you do, not how you do it, but why you do it, you stop being one of many. You start being the only one. 2. Manipulation creates action. Only inspiration creates loyalty. You can drop the price, run the promotion, threaten the punishment, dangle the reward. It works. People will move. But the moment the manipulation stops, so does the relationship. And the next time you need them to act, you'll have to pay even more. Inspiration is the only way to build a relationship that compounds instead of evaporating. It costs more upfront. It pays forever. 3. Communicate from the inside out. Most of us talk about ourselves outside in. Here's what I do. Here's how I'm different. Want to work together? Try flipping it. Start with what you believe. State the why first, then the how, then the what. You'll find that the people who already shared that belief lean in immediately. You'll also find that the people who don't share it lose interest fast. Both of those outcomes are good. The first one builds your team. The second one saves you from wasting years on people who were never going to be a fit. 4. Hire believers, not resumes. Shackleton's ad was a filter, not a job description. Southwest hired cheerleaders, not flight attendants. The lesson is the same. Skills can be taught, belief cannot. If you're hiring anyone for anything, a coworker, a contractor, a babysitter for your kids, the most important question is not what they can do, it's what they care about. Find the cathedral builders, send the wall builders somewhere else. 5. Give your people a cathedral. If you lead anyone, a team, a family, a community, even just yourself, your job is to make sure they know what they're really building, not the wall in front of them, the cathedral the wall is part of. Speak it out loud, repeat it more than feels comfortable, because the people lifting the heavy stones forget on the hard days. And the leader's most important job is to remind them why those stones matter. 6. Find the believers first. The majority will follow. Don't aim for the middle of the curve. Speak first to the small group of people who already see the world the way you do. Let them tell the rest. Movements never start with the practical majority. Movements always start with the small percentage of people who didn't need to be convinced. They just needed to be found. 7. Protect your WI as you grow. The greatest danger to anything built on belief isn't competition. It isn't market disruption. It isn't bad luck. It's success. The bigger you get, the louder the metrics get, the easier it is to mistake the result for the reason. Achievement is not the same as success. The yacht is not the same as the joy of pulling alongside the thing the yacht was built to chase. Write your why down. Live it every day. Teach it to everyone around you, because once it goes fuzzy, no amount of money in the world can buy it back. And the last takeaway, the one Sinek really wants you to sit with. The why is not something you invent. It's something you discover. You don't sit down one Saturday morning and brainstorm what you believe. You look backwards. You look at the choices you made when nobody was watching. You look at the moments you felt most alive, the work you'd have done for free, the people whose company gave you energy, the problems you couldn't stop thinking about. Your why is already there. It's already in your past. Most of us just never bothered to look. And when you find it, when you can finally put words to the thing you've been carrying your whole life, everything you do afterwards starts to make sense in a way it never quite did before. Remember the Wright brothers, working out of that bicycle shop in Ohio. No money, no degrees, no connections, just a quiet conviction that something they believed in mattered more than the wealth and fame they'd never have. And remember Langley, with everything they didn't have, walking away the moment glory slipped out of reach. There's a Langley in all of us, the version of ourselves that chases the visible reward and quits when the visible reward doesn't show up. And there's a Wright in all of us too, the version that keeps building, in the cold, in the dark, in the obscurity, because the work itself is the thing. The question Sinek leaves you with, and the one I want to leave you with, is this. If somebody asked you, very simply, why you do what you do, could you answer them? Not what you do, not how you do it. Why? Could you give them a sentence that didn't sound like a corporate slogan, a sentence that came from somewhere real? If you can't, and most of us can't, not yet, that's not a failure, that's an invitation to look back at your own life, to find the why that's been quietly running under everything you've ever done, and to start building for the first time from the inside out. If anything in this video landed for you, I'd recommend grabbing a copy of the full book on Amazon or Audible, links in the description. Sinek goes much deeper into a lot of what we covered tonight, and there are stories I couldn't fit in here that are worth your time. And if you want more deep dives like this, books that don't just give you information but actually help you see your own life differently, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.